Quiet on set.
Okay.
Tero Documentary presents Filming in Thailand, a podcast for movie lovers with exclusive stories from behind the scenes.
Rolling sound
Sound rolling.
and action. Here we are with Tom Waller, our guest for today's episode of Filming in Thailand. Welcome and thank you for joining us at Terror Radio Studios in Bangkok.
Thank you very much for asking me.
Tom, are you filming in Thailand?
I actually am. As of now, we're filming a new Dutch comedy in the kingdom, and we've just started our principal photography here, and so we're in the middle of the shoot. So yes, I am currently filming in Thailand.
Tom, you're a filmmaker, you're a director, a producer. What word would you use to describe who you are more accurately?
Well, I think like all of us in the industry here, you have to wear many hats if you want to survive. It's a very brutal and very competitive industry. So I'm doing many things. Yes, I'm a filmmaker, and that's my passion. And I enjoy what I suppose I enjoy most is making my own films as a director. But I also run a company that handles foreign production here in Thailand. So I have a production service company. And I'm also working with, I'm working with Terror Entertainment to run their film division, Film Bangkok. So I indeed wear many hats, but essentially I am they like to call it content creator these days, which I think is a terrible way of calling someone like me. It sounds like a sort of factory content creator. Doesn't sound very inspiring, but I always refer to myself as a filmmaker for sure.
You are listening to Filming in Thailand, a podcast by Tero Documentary, with your host, Stéphane Lambert.
Billy Wilder said a director must be a policeman, a midwife, a psychanalyst, a sycophant, and a bastard. Who are you?
Interesting quote you've chosen there. Just give me those again, just one more time, because I haven't heard that quote before from Billy Wilder.
So I'm sure he said it somewhere, at least somewhere where someone wrote it. So a director must be a policeman, a midwife, a psychoanalyst, a sycophant, and a bastard. Are you a bastard on set?
No, not as a director. I think a lot of those words can be used to describe a producer, because sometimes you do feel like a midwife as a producer because you're you're assisting someone else in giving birth to their vision. You know, films and directing it's a director's medium. And so very much it's their vision that the team and your collaborators are all led by the director, and he's kind of the captain of the ship, as it were, on a production. And I think that the producer is actually the midwife, not the director. So in that case, I would say director, is he a sycophant? You can be sycophantic to your lead actors and be, to praise them in order to get a great performance out of them. But I don't think it's about sycophancy. I think it's more about having a dream, pursuing that dream and trying to realize your vision. So I think directors are visionaries more than anything else. I'm not sure if I agree with that quote.
What led you to pursue your career?
I was always interested in the movies ever since a child. When I was going to see Steven Spielberg films, I think the first memory I have is seeing E.T. My father took me to see the film in a cinema, and I just was mind blown by the story, and especially by the ET, by the extraterrestrial. I felt that could have been a real story. I was really, the fact maybe because the lead role is a 10-year-old kid, and I was probably the same age at the time, I could really relate to that story so much in terms of the imagination running wild. And I just think that was probably the first film that inspired me to become a filmmaker. So since that day of watching that film, I thought this is kind of what I want to do. I want to tell stories.
Tom, you mentioned Steven Spielberg. I have a fantastic quote for you from Steven Spielberg. He said, filmmaking is all about appreciating the talents of the people you surround yourself with and knowing you could never have made any of these films by yourself. Do you agree?
I totally agree with that. I think filmmaking is indeed a collaboration, and it's all about the people you surround yourselves with. I try to put people around me who are maybe better at doing things than I am at certain things. For example, I always try to find collaborators who can bring something special to the table. And, you know, in every kind of, even in the technical roles, it's important to have good people around you so that they can help to deliver your vision. And you know, in Thailand, we have a lot of really good technicians here. The technical crews are second to none, and also some very good DPs who live here. You know, not all Thai. There's some expats who are living in the city who also can, you know, they work and live here. So they're it's like hiring Thai people, but it's actually, you get someone who has maybe a Western background in terms of their education. I'm working a lot with the expat community here, and also with Thais who are maybe mixed, like myself, half Thai, half something else. You know, we tend to be more versatile in terms of liaising with foreign crews because we have the language skills of English that can be something that is very useful on set when you're communicating, and often a lot of the time you can get lost in communication here in Thailand because of the language barriers. And so when you're filming, especially on foreign movies, it's especially important to have good people around you. So I totally agree with Mr. Spielberg's quotation.
You are listening to Filming in Thailand, a podcast by Tero Documentary, with your host, Stéphane Lambert.
You are listening to Filming in Thailand, the show that uncovers the story behind filming in Thailand with our fantastic guest, Tom Waller, The Cave. Would you say that was a typical Thai film?
Not at all. I think The Cave was a very special production in that it was, you know, it was an East meets West story. We had a foreign diver who comes to Thailand to rescue a kid in a cave that he's never met, or kids. You know, I mean, he ends up bringing the protagonist in the story, Jim Warrenne, came from Ireland, and he rescued Coach Egg out of the cave in that summer of 2018. And I thought that was a very special individual story, and I wanted to tell his story because, to be honest, I couldn't get access to any of the official information on the event because the Thai Navy were very secretive about what had happened. And the only way you could get information was to talk to foreigners and the volunteers who were there. So when I talked to Jim, I thought I had an amazing story to tell. And then I, of course, discovered other participants in the rescue, like the Thai farmer who let her fields be sacrificed. You know, she sacrificed her rice crop by letting them flood the fields to alleviate the water in the caves, and also the pump manufacturer who brought his water pumps from the other side of the country to come and help just because he saw the news on TV and wanted to help these kids come out of the cave. So I think it was a film about people coming together, a film about, you know, hope, and stood for hope. And I think the movie is very unique in that it's half in Thai and half in English. But I kind of feel it's the authentic version of what happens because these are the real people who are really there. And I tried to portray as much as possible the true story of the cave rescue, you know, warts and all. So certain people weren't happy with the depiction of maybe government workers and civil servants, but, you know, these things happen with any international rescue. There's always going to be a level of red tape involved, and I just was showing it how it was. And, you know, the controversy that was generated, I guess, from that depiction was only, you know, short-lived. It was only, you know, a newsworthy event in Thailand. So it was something that created some extra interest in the film here. But around the world, you know, people were oblivious really to that. And they saw the film, you know, as a Thai film that, you know, had kind of traveled more widely because most Thai films don't get to be seen outside of Thailand or outside of Southeast Asia. So I'm very proud that the film played in 26 countries, theatrically in cinemas, and it was even released in the United States under a different name called Cave Rescue by Lionsgate. So I'm very proud that the film traveled as far and wide as it did. And of course, after that, Ron Howard and other filmmakers came along with their own versions of the story. And 13 Lives sort of superseded The Cave, because they had a lot more money, probably 60 times my budget, and they were able to create something with movie stars, and movie stars are always a draw.
Tom, there is this film that you directed and produced, I believe, titled The Last Executioner, and I heard... I don't know if I heard this story. I don't know if the person was serious or was just joking. But in your film, you're dealing with ghosts, with spirits.
Yeah, spirits. Yeah.
And this person was telling me it must be very difficult in Thailand to shoot a story with spirit that is so strong, because you might scare the crew and the cast. Did you encounter that?
We had various spirits portrayed in the film anyway by actors. One of them was David Asavanon, who does a great job playing the sort of he plays what they call a Yamatut in Thai, which is like a angel of death, if you like. And the depiction of our ghosts were our spirits were very unique, I think, to Thailand, because in Thailand people they do believe that a spirit could be in the same room as you, and they think nothing of it, like the furniture. So there is this very widespread and deep respect for the spirit world, just as much as there is for the living. And that's why also when we start any film production, we always have a ceremony to make merit to the spirits, and especially to what we call the Jiao-Ti, so the spirit who's looking after that place or location. So, for example, yesterday we had our merit-making ceremony for the new film that we're shooting at the moment, and it involves some offerings, and this is something that is very important for the crew and important for our foreign guests as well. They like to see that we're respecting traditions here. So. But yes, on Last Execution, coming back to that film, it wasn't so much that we were spooked by spirits, but we were filming in a real prison. And this, I think, was more of, made people more anxious than the spirits, because generally speaking, Thais are not that scared of good spirits anyway. And I remember arriving at the prison, Bangkok prison, we had a letter from the ministry from the Ministry of Justice saying that we were able to make this film and that we would be allowed to shoot inside the prison. So we had a letter with us. We came to the prison warden, and the prison warden looked at the letter and said, yes, you have permission to film in the prison. So I said, okay, fine, we're going to bring in our actors and our cameras. He said, no, you have permission to film in the prison, but it doesn't say anything about having actors in the prison. Like, I'm not going to allow actors into my prison. The prison is a dangerous place, and for security reasons, I can't allow it. And I said, well, how am I supposed to tell a story about a prison executioner who's not allowed to get into the prison? He said, well, you're the director, you work it out, if you're so clever. So I remember just having this confrontation with the warden and thinking, oh my God, this is not going to be good. In the end, we managed to find ways around this by actually filming outside the prison, but using the exterior prison wall as if it was the interior prison wall. So in the film, you hardly notice, but actually the towers with the prison guards are looking the other way. So whereas the towers would look, let's say, if you're inside the prison, the towers, the guards would be looking inwards at you to check that everything is secure. But in the film, you see that the prison towers are actually the other way around. But you hardly notice it.
Hardly notice. That brings me to ask you about your current activities. And so I know that you have just finished Kiss of the Con Queen, your latest film that you direct and produce.
Yes. Kiss of the Con Queen it's actually an English language film, but it's all filmed mainly in Thailand, but in other parts of Southeast Asia. We shot some of it in Jakarta, Indonesia, and it's also filmed partly in the United States. and we also filmed in Ireland, in Tokyo, Japan. So it's filmed in 5 locations around the world, and we're in post-production at the moment. So we're actually doing our sound mixing and the color grading here, and the film hopefully will debut at one of the big film festivals around the world somewhere. We're looking to try and premiere the film probably in this autumn. So that's a bit of a waiting game on that movie, because it was independently produced, and so we need to have an outlet for the film that will launch the movie to the world. And it's unlike some films which are already kind of predetermined. So the film I'm doing now already has a distributor. It's already coming out later in the year. We know exactly when it's going to be released in cinemas, whereas when you make an independent film, you don't always know the fate of the movie. So it's a little bit different when you make your own film and you haven't got distribution lined up.
You have this passion project that I know about, Siam. This is a project that you've been carrying with you for some time, that
Yes.
is extremely big, large. Can you tell us a word about Siam?
Of course. Siam is a project I've been developing for the last few years. It's set in the Ayutthaya period. So, the film is set in a place and time that is difficult to recreate and expensive to recreate. And the story has gone through various changes, because the world we live in now is more interested in, I guess, audiences are more interested in watching a series than they are watching a film. So I've redeveloped the material as a TV show, as a high-end TV series, and we're hoping to try and get that into production next year. It's set in the 17th century, and it involves foreigners in an elephant caravan coming to Ayutthaya and crossing the peninsula over coming up through the Tenasserim River and then overland from Maguire to Ayutthaya. So it's a very interesting time and place, and it also has some historical figures, some taken from reality and blended with fiction.
Is it a good example of what is the challenge you're facing today as a filmmaker?
Yes, the challenge really is financing for the content development, if you like, the development process in any of these high-end TV series you see on streaming platforms has had a lot of money and effort plowed into making those stories interesting and developed properly for modern audiences. Now, we don't have an infrastructure here to do that. There's no culture of development. There's people who have ideas and they get, maybe greenlit to a movie because someone decides they're just going to finance it, or they find some studio boss who's going to say, yeah, I'm going to finance this movie because I want to put my, leading actor in it, and therefore it gets greenlit because of just someone's personal wish to get the film made. But in the real world, in the West, the development process, it can take months and years to get something right for an audience. And I think that's one of the reasons why Thai films don't travel so much, is because they're not always developed at script level so well, and there's sometimes a rush to get them into production because they've got a certain movie star's availability available, and they say, oh, we've got this guy, he can do the film, but only between March and April, so we've got to get into production quickly. And they don't really think about whether the script is right or whether the script is good enough. And so I think a lot of the content that's generated here suffers from lack of script development. And you see it on television where they've rushed things into production and sometimes it's not well worked out. I think there could be a lot more support in terms of getting IP at the content creation level developed more so that it can be more appealing to audiences around the world. And of course, we have no state funding for any of this. So all production projects, if you like, all audiovisual projects are either self-financed or privately financed by companies or persons, individuals. And so there's no sustainable industry. If you talk about where do you get your finance from, there's no one way to make a film, but you have to beg, borrow, and steal to get something made here. And I think that the West has a lot more infrastructure in terms of local support for their films. I mean, yes, we do have the Ministry of Culture gives pockets of money, but very small amounts and to quite obscure projects sometimes. So I feel like there's a lack of funding in the entertainment industry, and they rely, certainly Thailand has sustained itself on private enterprise. And so it's very much an entrepreneurial business, especially TV, where television, in order to get a show on TV, you have to buy the airtime, make the soap opera, and then hopefully sell it to advertisers. And with advertisers now, spending less money, even the television business is in some state of, how do you say? It's not in crisis, but I mean, sure. Things are changing, and now we're looking at everything moving to platforms and less people watching terrestrial television, more and more people watching content on their apps.
You are listening to Filming in Thailand, a podcast by Tero Documentary, with your host, Stéphane Lambert.
And your guest, Tom Waller, filmmaker, director, producer, with us today. To conclude our show, I have a few more questions to ask you and a quote. This time is for Martin Scorsese, who most probably declared once that the whole point of making films is to challenge myself, said Martin Scorsese, to find a personal truth and then to use all the technical means available to make it live for an audience. Tom, if you had to choose one or few directors or producer, who would say are your main influence?
Sure, I've got many, but certainly I have some favorites. Certainly filmmakers who I really admire. I mean, apart from Steven Spielberg, we talked a little about already. And I mean, I got into the movies also through Star Wars. So I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and, George Lucas was really an inspiration. It's less exciting now that it's become, a TV show on Disney Plus. I enjoy seeing the legacy of Star Wars, but nothing beats those original films. Watching them as a kid. But Ridley Scott, I guess, and Christopher Nolan, those filmmakers are very much the ones that I admire. I still see, Ridley Scott's still making films. And I'd love to be making films like he is at his age, and he's doing, he still does a great job. The films that he's directed recently, I think, are mind-blowing still. And I'm really looking forward to Napoleon. But also I admire people like Christopher Nolan, who've brought a lot of energy to contemporary stories and storytelling. And, his Dark Knight series was amazing. And I'm often, when I get on a plane, I'm often rewatching Christopher Nolan movies. That's what tells me that I'm drawn to be inspired by his work, because I sort of go in and I rewatch Interstellar and try and see if I can understand it better, or I go and rewatch Tenet on the plane and try and work out that, I think there's so much levels and layers to his films that make them really interesting on a second viewing. And so there's not a lot of filmmakers where I would go back and watch a film twice, but he's one of them for sure.
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan. Yeah.
After this prolific career, if you had this opportunity, what would you say to your 20 years old self?
That's a really interesting question. I think my 20-year-old self didn't really know what he was doing. So I'd say...
Because you know now.
I know now, yeah. So I wish I had the experience that I have now when I was 20 and do it all over again. I see that sometimes in younger people I'm working with. I sometimes see a version of myself in the crew that I work with, or someone in the crew. And I'm always trying to tell them, listen, don't make the same mistakes I did about this and that. But they never listen. The problem is when you're 20 years or 20 in your 20s, you're hot-headed and you don't listen, just as I was not listening to anyone. But I think there's no one way to do things. So you find your own way. And I think as a filmmaker, you have to go on that adventure, and you have to also have a little bit of life experience to tell an interesting story. So I don't think you can be a great director age 18. I think you could be a better director age 38 than 18, 20 years later when you've had some life experience. So I only really got going later in my career. The last 10 years, I sort of feel like directing, I know what I'm doing. Whereas when I was 23 trying to direct a film, I probably didn't know what I was doing. So it's very strange to watch back the work you did earlier in your career. Can sometimes be you don't recognize that person, or you don't recognize that voice. So, and of course, as we go forwards, we've got technology around the corner that's going to revolutionize and change everything. There's a big strike on now by the Screen Actors Guild, and that a lot of that is about this AI technology that's coming in, because at a certain point we're going to be able to license a version of Star Wars where I could put my face on Luke Skywalker's body, and that could be a thing. I could watch the movie with your own image or likeness instead of the actor. I mean, that's already, that technology is already there.
That's available. Yes.
It's already available. And also the other thing is actors. Soon you'll be able to speak into a microphone and sound like Morgan Freeman. I think you can already do that. You can already do that. But I think that's what this whole strike is about. It's the actors' rights and the image rights and their likeness, which is at stake. And it also could be very opportunistic for agents and 10%ers who are going to get more money for having a Morgan Freeman voice license that carries on paying, because you can multiply that and you can have Morgan Freeman, across the different various media without actually having to have Morgan Freeman there. So I think it's very dangerous as well, because it could put actors out of work, because you don't need to have the real guy, you could just have his voice. So I think we're living in dangerous times when it comes to technology and AI, not just in the film industry, but is going to revolutionize the way we live over the next 10 years. And I think by 2030, it's going to be a very different place and different workplace to where we are now. A lot of it's going to be not robotic, but a lot of it will be, people will be out of a job because of AI. And I think that you have to have skill now that either can embrace that technology and use it to your advantage, or else you better find other skills that computers can't do.
So if you had now $100 million at your disposal, what would you do?
I think I'd make 100 films, or I'd make 10 films of $10 million. No, I mean, I'm very frugal as a filmmaker. I don't like to spend a lot of money on films if I don't think that it's worth spending that money on the movie. So I'm kind of working in the lower budget space right now, which I enjoy because you have total creative freedom. And as soon as you bring on big money, you've got 1,000 producers telling you what to do. And I think this is very, very difficult to then make a film with your own vision, unless you're Christopher Nolan and you can command $170 million budgets. But I mean, I was just looking at the statistics of filming in Thailand last year. I mean, I think the total spend of filming in Thailand in 2022 was about $180 million. Now that could be equivalent to just one film in Hollywood. Now $180 million is a vast amount of money, but and that's spread across, I think, over 300 projects that were done here. But just goes to show that there is a lot of money in the film industry, and if one film in the United States can cost $170 million, if only we could attract more to come here, I think the spend in the kingdom could be a lot higher. And I think that Thailand has a lot to offer, but the government needs to take seriously that the film industry could be a real source of revenue for local content as well, because we've got some great talent here, but they're not investing in development, and we need to develop our IP and create stories that are engaging to audiences around the world.
Tom, before we go, I have to award you with this fantastic gift. Award for the best guest of filming in Thailand, at least for this episode.
So far.
So far, so good. This is the award. It's a mug. It's
brilliant.
The Tero documentary official mug.
Oh, it's very exciting. I'm just going to have a look now. Oh, that's very kind of you. I'm honored to receive this award from Terror Documentary. Thank you very much, Stefan.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tom. Audience, be sure to check out Tom's work. We'll have his, links to his films, to the trailers, to where you can watch, where you can purchase and watch.
Well, you can legally purchase the film. We can legally download.
That's not bad. That's not bad. That wraps up another episode of Filming in Thailand. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, people, fantastic. That's a wrap.
I'll use it on set.
That was Filming in Thailand, an original podcast brought to you by Terror Documentary on Hoodie Podcast, with your host, Stefan Lombe.
Thank you for listening and stay tuned for our next episode of Filming in Thailand.
Okay, I'm released?
Yes,
I can go?
please. Thank you so
I got to run. Redo it? Take two?
Take two.
That was Filming in Thailand, an original podcast brought to you by Terror Documentary on Hoodie Podcast, with your host, Stefan Lambert. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode.